All right, welcome everybody. I'm glad you found this video. So this is going to be a quick video primarily for students in RISE, the Rocket Ship Introduction for Student Education program. The Rocket project at UCLA is running fall quarter 2017, but anybody else watching, I hope you learned something as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick introduction to using SolidWorks for computer-aided design. And if you already have some experience and you're already familiar with the SolidWorks platform, I encourage you to just go ahead and skip this video, go to the next one that I make, and that one should be up in a day or two on nose cone design specifically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the SolidWorks environment and talk a little bit about just computer-aided design in general, why it's helpful, and how you can utilize it in rocket design and also in the classes that you're going to take in the remainder of your 4 years. So if you're a mechanical or aerospace engineering major especially, computer-aided design is going to be a big part of what you do, and it's going to be a big part of your classes. So I want to start off just at the Wikipedia page. And here you can see that just in the first sentence it says, computer-aided design is the use of computer systems or workstations to aid in the creation, modification, analysis, or optimization of a design. And that keyword right there is optimization of a design. So as opposed to, for example, hand sketching, if you make a mistake while you're designing something on a computer, you don't need to start from scratch. You can simply modify, and you do not need to start all the way from scratch. Another advantage of computer-aided design is it's gonna help you realize some 3D modeling, and it's gonna allow you to show off your product or your part to your fellow engineers, but also to anyone you're pitching an idea to, an industry, for example. And the last thing that computer-aided design is great for is analysis. So like it says right here, analysis. So once you've made a part in, for example, SolidWorks, you can do simulations on it. You can then see what your next iteration is going to need to take into account, and you can modify it on the computer as opposed to having to physically prototype and spend the money and the manufacturing time on that. Okay, so let's jump right into some computer-aided design. And first of all, I want to talk about the fact that there are many different environments. That SolidWorks is just one environment. It's just what we use. It is pretty popular in industry, but depending on the company, a different program is used. And same thing at UCLA, same thing in our classes, and it's completely up to you. So here, this is something pretty basic. This is SketchUp, and I believe this was created by Google, but I could be wrong. And this is actually the same exact concept as SolidWorks. But this is it's a little bit more basic. So as you can see, we have an environment where we can go up and we can actually make 2D sketches. As you can see, I'm just dragging a line here. And if I enclose, for example, a 2D shape, like I did there, I can actually go ahead and do what's called extruding. I can add a dimension and make it a 3D part. So I'm going to use this feature right here called push-pull. I can actually pull it up and down. I can do what's called extruding. So I don't want to spend too much time in SketchUp, but this just shows that this is one software where you can make 3D models of parts. You can actually 3D print from this, and SolidWorks is just one good option. Okay. I also have Fusion 360 open right here, and so Autodesk Fusion 360. This you can use on a Mac. For some reason, my dimensions on my computer are strange, so it looks a little funky and not as high quality as it probably will on your computer. This is free to students for 3 years. As you can see, it's the same idea. We have an environment where we can make sketches, where we can draw lines, we can draw 2D shapes, and we can then go ahead and add a dimension with that. So as you can see, I can make some lines, I can connect them, and then I can actually do the same thing. I can extrude this up, and I can add a dimension. I already have a 3D shape. I'm not too familiar with Autodesk Fusion 360. I actually just downloaded it yesterday, but this shows that it's a similar concept. All right, now let's get into some SolidWorks. So if we move over to the SolidWorks environment, I've actually already opened a part, but let's go through that process. So the first thing you're going to be presented with are these 3 options: part, assembly, and drawing. Now, for the most part, you're going to be doing most of your work in part, and then or at least starting with parts, and then you're going to be, from that part, creating drawings or creating assemblies with multiple parts. So let's go ahead and open up a part. Okay, so we have this blank environment, and first of all, I want to familiarize you with some of the basic features that we see right when I open it up. So the most helpful thing right here at the top is we have this SolidWorks, this search bar. And that search bar is going to be extremely helpful. Whenever you can't find something, you can just type it in. You don't need to find it in the top, in the feature tree, anything like that. You can actually just go ahead and you can see that one of the things that I've typed in the past is actually just tutorials. So if you actually type in tutorials, it can help you find the built-in SolidWorks tutorials that I encourage you all to take. They don't take that long and they'll teach you quite a bit. But let's get started. So the next thing is in this in this environment, right now it looks blank, but if I scroll over any of these planes, it's showing me the plane, and I can choose a plane that I want to start a sketch in. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the top plane. And the next thing is, I don't really want to be looking at it from this kind of sideways isometric view. So I'm going to go ahead, and here's a quick trick. You can actually hit the space bar. If you hit the space bar, you'll see this cube, and that's going to allow me to choose which face do I want to look at it from. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this front face. And actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and rotate it, which can be done using your mouse. I highly recommend that you use a mouse whenever using SolidWorks, doing some CAD. So I'm now normal to the plane, and now it looks nice, and I am just ready to go, ready to start making a sketch. So up at the top, we have these options. And if I want to make a sketch, I'm going to need to click the sketch button to enter a sketch. And now I'm in a sketch that's exclusively in this plane, the plane that I've chosen, which is the top plane. But you could do it in any other plane as well. Now we have some options of what we can create. These are just some of the basic ones, but there are more options. So this is the line option, and there are different types of lines that you can create. Circle option. This is called the spline. That's going to allow you to make some funky curves. And what we'll be using later is the equation-driven curve, which turns SolidWorks into a glorified graphing calculator that can really help you, especially when you make your nose cone later on. Okay, some rectangle tools that will help us. Arcs, some ellipses. This is going to be used if you want to actually write. For example, if you wanted to cut out, kind of carve out some letters in the design, that would help you do that. And then polygon, that can help make octagons, hexagons, any shape with any number of sides. And then this is called the fillet. And we'll get to that later. That's going to allow you to round edges. And then, of course, point. So let's talk about what we can do from here. So if I wanted to create a 3D shape, I wanted to create, let's say, a rectangular prism, how would I do that? So we first need to think about what's the cross-section of a rectangular prism. And if we thought about how if we sliced a rectangular prism at any point, and we sliced it parallel to one of the planes, one of the faces that is, then we would get a rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to insert a corner rectangle. So I'm going to click, and as you can see, whenever I'm coincident to a point, whenever I'm right over a point that's perhaps of interest, like the origin, it's going to actually turn orange for me. It's going to give me the little yellow coincident icon. I'm going to click, so I know I'm right there. And I can drag it all around, and I can make this rectangle. So I've now made a rectangle. Now it's ready to go. Make me another one. So it's really easy. If you just hit escape, it's going to get you out of there. So that then you can go to, instead of making a new rectangle, you can modify the one you already created. I'm going to click on this, and as you can see on the left side, I can actually modify the dimensions. Right now, I've dragged it to a very obscure length, but I can change that. So let's change that to something a little bit more of a round number. We'll say 5. And I can do the same thing with this other line right here. Set 1.41, let's make it 3. Okay, so now I've created a rectangle. And if you go ahead and you can either click the green arrow, the green check mark, or just click anywhere else, and it'll go ahead and get you out of the modification screen. And now I have this rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit Exit Sketch, and I can now look at this. Now, using my mouse, I can scroll around this 3D space, and I can see what this rectangle looks like. But right now, all it is it's this kind of wireframe at the moment. It's this simple sketch. It's made completely in 2D, and I want to make it 3D. So I'm going to use something called the Extruded Boss Base feature, which is what I did in SketchUp and what I actually did also in Fusion 360 quickly. But I'm going to use the same tool. Now, to extrude simply means to force out, kind of push through or push out a surface. So I'm going to click Extruded Boss Base. And now I'm going to use my mouse to show you what it's trying to do. So it's adding a dimension. It's adding depth to this rectangle, and it's making it into a rectangular prism. So I can now choose how far out I want it to extrude, what I want the depth to be. So I'm going to go ahead and make it 3 inches. And as you can see, it's now 3 inches. I can also go ahead and change the direction by just clicking this. And I can change the way in which it's extruding out. Now, right here, blind is okay, but if I wanted it mid-plane, for example, you can see it goes either direction instead of just one direction and splits the distance in 2. Or you can do up to surface. That would be helpful if I had, say, another surface that a few inches away, and I wanted to stop there and not find the distance manually. That'd be really helpful. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click the green check. What I've done is I've now created this 3D model, and I'm simply using my mouse right now to go ahead and spin it in every which way, every direction. And now we can continue to modify in the same way. So let's say I don't want this to be a simple rectangular prism. Maybe I want it to look like steps, okay? What I can do is you can click on any surface and you can go ahead and go back to sketch and create a new sketch. Now I really like being normal to a plane, so I'm going to hit spacebar again and I'm going to get normal to the plane. And now I can start sketching on this surface. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit line. And as you can see, it's snapping, it's called snapping to all these different relations. So here, that orange is telling me I'm on that line. It's telling me that's the midpoint of this edge of the surface, midpoint. It's going to give me these nice relations. So if I click and start dragging out, it's also going to snap and tell me, oh, there you go, you're 180 degrees. Oh, there you go, you're 0 degrees, 90 degrees, and like so. So that's going to be very helpful. It's also going to give you the 45s, and it's going to help you once you've already created someone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try to make 2 steps. So I'm going to drag it right to the middle, make sure it's at 180, and click. Now I'm going to go up, I'm going to click again. So right now I have this simple sketch, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to enclose this. Enclosing your sketches, your contour lines is going to be important whenever you want to use an extrude feature. Okay, because you can't extrude something that doesn't connect to itself. So now I've made the sketch. I'm going to click the green arrow, and I have this sketch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do somewhat the opposite of what I did last time. So I'm going to exit sketch, and instead of extruding, I'm going to use the extruded cut feature, which is going to do the exact opposite. It's going to force out in a cutting fashion. So as you can see, it already is giving me a preview of what it wants to do. It's already going 3 inches, which is perfect, but I can make it less. If I wanted to say cut out a little bit, then that's what it would look like. But I'm going to cut out the 3, and then I'm going to click yes. So it's actually cut that away from me, and you can see my model. Now, I can continue to do this, and I can make an infinite amount of sketches, but sometimes you're going to make mistakes or want to go back and modify a dimension. So let's say that I realized that for whatever purpose I designed this for, it actually needs to be, this first step needs to be a little bit lower. So I want to cut out a little bit more. Instead of completely starting from scratch, you can simply modify using the feature manager tree. So I'm going to go to the feature manager tree, and I'm going to right click on what I want to change. And actually, first of all, you can go ahead and click the arrow, the drop down. It's going to tell you what that extrude was based on. And if you actually go up and you right click, you can see the edit sketch, as well as a few other options. So I'm going to hit edit sketch. So now it's actually going to let me go ahead and edit what I've done. And whatever I edit, whatever edits I make, whatever modifications are going to be applied to the extrude as well. So now I have this rectangle. So let's say I click on it, and I'm going to go ahead and actually, I'm going to delete this line, and I'm going to extend these lines out a little bit. So I'm going to go there, I'm going to snap over here, and then go up and connect that. So let's see what it does when I do that. So now I've done that, and I'm going to go ahead and exit my sketch, and there we go. It's actually cut out a little bit extra for me. So I could do the exact same thing in the original one. Let's say I wanted to make this larger. I can edit this sketch, and from the very beginning I could change what it extruded out. And I can exit sketch and it'll rebuild. There's a rebuild button up at the top. In case it doesn't automatically rebuild for you, you can always just change that. So there we go. All right, fantastic. So we've made a rectangular prism, but I think we can do a little bit more. Another thing that's going to be important is once you get started, please do this in the beginning. Make sure to save your part. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control S, and I'm going to go to I'm just going to save it in what I usually save in. I'm actually going to save it in the Rise folder, and you can name it whatever you'd like, and it's going to save it as a part file, so an sl.sldprt, and that's a SolidWorks specific part. So I'm going to just go ahead and name this learning. Okay, so now that it's saved, you can hit Control S at any time. It's going to save it, and just in case SolidWorks crashes on you or anything happens, you'll have that, and all the hard work that you've done won't go to waste. So I'm actually going to go ahead. I'm going to hit delete. I'm just going to go back and delete what I've done so far, so I can start over. I was just using the delete button there. So I'm going to go to that top plane again. And now my goal is that I want to go ahead and make a body tube, because we are going to be making body tubes for ourselves, and it's going to be beneficial to go ahead and make a design, a computer-aided design that we can show of our rockets. And so there are two ways that I can do that, but they both start with the same thing. So if I want to make a cylinder, the cross section of a cylinder is going to be a circle. So I'm going to go to Sketch, I'm going to hit the Sketch button, and now I'm going to go ahead and make a circle. Okay, so I'm going to make it, and you can always just go ahead and click, hit Escape, go back and click on your shape, and go ahead and change the dimensions there. Don't worry about dragging out until you see it says the perfect dimension, because it's actually rounding. So even if it says 5, it's likely it could be at 4.97 or anything like that. Now, it's also worth noting that I'm using inch, pound, seconds at the moment. You can at any point go ahead and change the units that you're using right here. If it doesn't show up originally there, you can go ahead and change that. And I believe that's just under preferences. And so if you go to options, there are a lot of options you can change about your environment and things you can change. And that would be pretty helpful. So now I've created this sketch. I'm going to exit it. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit Extruded Boss Base like I did before. So now, as you can see, it's giving me a cylinder. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than that. I'm going to make it 10 inches. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. And I have this nice cylinder. And actually, you know what? After I do this extrude, I'm going to go back and I'm going to change the sketch, because that's a pretty big radius, and I don't really need that big radius. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go back in, I'm going to change it to 1.5, which is actually 1.52, which is the inner diameter of the body tubes we're going to be using on our rockets. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to use that spacebar trick again to get normal to it. I have this circle. I'm going to go ahead and hit Exit Sketch. All right, it's already rebuilt and taken into account the change that I made, and I have this beautiful cylinder. Now, there's two ways that I can get this cylinder to be hollow, because, of course, our body tubes are not going to be solid pieces of material. So one way I can do it is I can click on this face, I can make a new sketch. I'm going to hit normal to it just to make it easier to work with. And I could go ahead and I could just make another circle and subtract the thickness that I want. And then I could simply exit that sketch and use the extruded cut feature to cut through all the way through that and get me that thin wall that I wanted. Okay, so there we go. I've use the extrude cut feature to make this body tube. But there's another way we can do it that's actually a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and delete what I just did. I'm going to go ahead and delete the sketch, and I'm going to go back to the boss extrude that I did. So if I go ahead and hit edit feature on the actual extrude itself, you can see that there's a couple of different things that I can do. And actually, one of the things that you can often do is you can change the direction that you're going in. You can also change the way in which you're extruding it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to delete this as well. So I'm going to go back and delete that. We're going to work with this circle. Okay, so I'll get normal to it, and I'm going to hit Extruded Boss Base, and I'm going to use what's called the thin feature. So a thin feature is going to do exactly what the 2 steps took me last time. It's going to extrude it out, but it's not going to extrude the entire thickness. It's going to take that outer contour line and go either in or out. You can change the direction in which it goes. Keep in mind that if I want it to be the inner radius, then obviously I'm going to want to go outside of it. And then I can choose the thickness that I want it to do. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes, and beautiful. It's made it in one quick step, and there we go. So I have already made a beautiful body tube. Now, one thing that you want to keep in mind is that quite a lot of the time, you're going to be designing parts that are symmetric in one way or another. So you may be adding a feature at this end that you want to also add at the other end. And so we'll do this first in the sketch plane. So I'm going to go ahead and delete what I've done so far, and I'm going to just start again. in the top plane. And we're going to be using what's called the mirror feature. Okay? So the mirror feature is actually going to allow us to take advantage of symmetry and do some pretty cool stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and hit sketch. And I'm going to go ahead and make a circle. Okay? Now, for example, let's say I wanted to create some thin slots, some evenly spaced slots that are in my body tube, in the outside of it. So when I extrude out this circle, I want there to actually be some holes in the sides. So one way I could do that is I could go ahead and actually draw out the different thin slots. But another thing I could do is I could use some of the mirror entities, some of these functions right here. Okay. So whenever you mirror something, you have to mirror it about a plane or a axis or sometimes a point. And so it's going to be important that we know what we're doing on that. But I'm going to go ahead now. So I'm going to actually go ahead and draw a quick line out. Okay, and this is going to allow me to kind of get an idea of where I'm starting with. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make just a few other lines. And what I'm doing right now, this isn't specific. This isn't too important, the specifics of what I'm doing. But any feature that I'm making, just like this, I'm going to go ahead. And now you can also use what's called trim entities. And trim entities, if you click on it, it's going to allow you to get rid of anything else. So I'm just going to hold my left-click mouse, and it's going to delete any of that extra stuff that may be on the outside. I'm going to go ahead and I'm also going to delete this. Okay. So fantastic. I now have this kind of strange shape that I've just created. Doesn't really serve a huge purpose, but now I'm going to use what's called the linear sketch pattern. And actually, I'm going to use circular sketch pattern. So if I click on that, it's going to allow me to actually go ahead and it's going to allow me to mirror that in around what I've done. So it's asking right now for the entities that I want to pattern. So what do I want to repeat? And because I chose circular sketch pattern, it's going to be doing it about the origin of this circle. So I'm going to hit for entities to pattern, because I need some of those. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click that, this line, and there we go. And as you can see, it's already mirroring it around kind of in this circular manner for me. And if I change how many times I want to do it, it's evenly spacing it out as many times as I want. And there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. I could add 10 of them. I could add just 2. Some pretty cool feature right there. And this is actually more complex than just using the normal mirror entities. And if I use the normal mirror entities, I could, for example, take this line and this line, the entities to mirror, and mirror them about this center line, and hit check, and there we go. I've created some symmetry. So I didn't have to do half the work that I would have needed to if I wanted to make that. Granted, I could have just made some straight lines here, but that's going to be a pretty powerful tool that you can all use. Now, also, once you get into some more complex geometry, I'm going to go ahead and use trim entities to get rid of what I've done in there, just so I get this circle. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to re-extrude out this circle that I've got. 10 inches is okay. You may want to mirror some features that you add after. So let's say I add some sort of feature to this surface, and I want it to appear on this surface. You're going to need to mirror your feature about a plane in this case. So a really helpful tool is going to be reference geometry at the top. If you click reference geometry, the different things you can create are right there. So I'm going to hit plane, okay? And now it's using this surface that I've already clicked on to help me make a plane. But I can choose another surface, and actually, if I click on those 2 surfaces, I'll get a plane that's directly in the center, which is exactly what I want. So if I create that, I've now created this plane that doesn't do anything. It's not a sketch plane. It's just simply some reference geometry that I can use. And now, if I go ahead and click on this, get normal to the plane, and make a sketch, I can do the exact same thing that I did before. So for example, let's say I make a quick circle and I want to make a hole. It doesn't go all the way through, it goes slightly through. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my circle. I'm going to use the extruded cut feature. And instead of going 10 inches, I only want to go 3 inches. So there we go. And so as you can see, I've kind of created this hole that doesn't go all the way through. And let's say I want that same hole on the other side. Now that I have this reference geometry, I can actually just simply click on the feature that I want to go ahead and mirror, and I can use the mirror function up at the top in 3D in the Features toolbar, just like I did in the Sketch toolbar, same idea. And I can click which plane I want to mirror it about. So I'm going to go ahead and select this plane. I'm going to hit check, and there we go. It's actually mirrored it about that. It's allowed me to do half the work. That's going to come in very handy, and you can use the same concept, linear pattern, you can use circular pattern for features as well as simple sketches. Okay, so we made a couple of easy parts, and it hasn't been too bad. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that SolidWorks is a pretty powerful tool for doing a little bit more than just creating these renders of models. You can also do motion studies, you can do some simulations, and those are up at the top. The other thing you can do is you can evaluate. So if I go ahead and click on the evaluate toolbar up at the top left, I can use what's called the measure tool, and that's really handy for instead of having to go into my sketches and verify them. I can use this measure tool to check out tons and tons of things. So if I just click on this outer circle, for example, it's going to tell me. It's going to tell me the length, so the circumference, it's going to tell me the diameter, so that's pretty helpful. Let's say I delete that. I'm no longer worried about that. I want to click on this surface. It's actually going to tell me the area of that surface. That's going to be fantastic for when you, for example, want to do some drag calculations on the nose cone or something like that. Instead of plugging in the formula, you can actually just use your model, click on that, and it'll tell you right away. Okay. Another thing is the mass properties button. The mass properties is going to allow you to actually find out what the mass is of the part you've designed. But first of all, you're going to need to use the material feature. So that's really helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click on material for this part. And if I hit edit material, I get all these options. So let's say I'm going to be 3D printing this part. I'm going to go to plastics. I'm going to just choose ABS. And I'm going to hit apply. So it's actually changed the color for me, but it's also changed the mass properties. So now if I go to mass properties, it's telling me everything I need to know about what I've designed. It's telling me the density of the material I'm using. It's telling me center of mass, which in this case is just right at the center of the y-axis. And in this case, it would weigh 5.17 pounds. So this is a pretty hefty part that I created here. I think I extruded 10 inches, so that's probably why. And yeah, so that's a pretty helpful feature as well. The other thing you can do is if you would like to change, for example, the color of what you're making, you can go ahead and use the Appearances tab. If I go to Color, it's going to give me all these different options. So I'm going to hit Metal, I'm going to right-click, and I can add this appearance to the part, and I can change it to any number of things. I can make it gold, I can make it look like anything that I want to within reason. And that's going to be pretty helpful down the line, for example, if you're doing an assembly, so putting multiple parts together and really want to distinguish between different parts, that can be helpful. All right, so I hope you learned something just about the SolidWorks environment and feel a little bit more comfortable using it and a little bit more confident in your skills. Please check out the video that I'll be posting on specifically how to make a nose cone. That's going to go over a couple of really helpful features that you'll probably be using in the future. All right, so thank you very much for watching, everybody. Good luck this week.